welkom bij Vurige Gesprekken. Mijn naam is Mara van Nes, ik ben theatermaker. En tijdens Oeroe ga ik in gesprek hier in deze prachtige zelfpluktuin met artiesten van het imaginaire eiland. Maar ook met artiesten die niet online te zien zijn, maar die wel deze weken hier aan het werk zijn op het eiland. Ik ga met ze in gesprek over het werk dat ze maken en de thema's die zowel zij als wij op Oeroe belangrijk vinden om het over te hebben. Een aantal van de gasten vanavond spreekt een andere taal dan Nederlands. En daarom hebben we ervoor gekozen om in het Engels dit gesprek te voeren. So, let's switch to English. You can understand me again. So the theme for tonight is a small piece of I, which you hadn't seen yet. And I chose to focus on this theme because the artists at this table, all in their own way, research in their work their own identity. And I would like to introduce them to you. So first we have Naomi Namutebi.
Yes. Hi.
She's one of the storytellers, 3 storytellers we have at the table tonight. The other one is Betal Ozai.
Oh.
And we have Erik Sjöholm.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes, they are all storytellers and they're working on a performance called Silaba from Mesrab House of Stories. And then also here at the table we have Lisette Maneza, and she is a poetess.
Yes.
A poetess. And she's here and she brought her band members, 2 of her band members, Peter and Michelle. And they're going to perform 2 songs actually later for us. But first, let's light the fire, because it's fire conversations. Naomi, you have the honors.
Yes.
Light the fire.
Yes.
Ooh. To warm us up a bit. Yeah. So it's been said about fire that it has tongues. It was actually described in the Bible the first time. And that these tongues, like they lick the wood, but also that sitting around the fire makes the tongues loose. So I thought it would be a very indispensable ingredient for our conversations this week. And I also brought some marshmallows. So you all have a stick. And you can put a marshmallow on the stick. Don't put them in the flames. And you can roast a marshmallow in the fire for that little extra kick, a short-term kick that you might need. But let's start. Let's start with Betal. Why are you here on the island?
Wow. First of all, thank you for inviting us. This is a really nice setup, and also being, in front of cameras with my partners here, it's a really great pleasure. We are in the island for presenting our show, Silaba. It's a storytelling show with music. And we've been going through this process for almost 4 months. And we will be, presenting our show here. It's a storytelling show, as I said, with the music. And it's themes with fathers and son and a mother and daughter, and we will be forging them with our personal experience and a little bit of fictitious structure where each character just takes his own journey. That's what we'll be doing.
And what is the story that you tell based on?
The tagline, how can I put it out? It's a story of a father who's been sent to an involuntarily digital sabbath or a screen detox, to a rehab actually, because something happened to his out of this addiction. And in the story, it's come through my personal experience about how I was literally attached to technology, especially during the COVID times, where our homes become our islands.
So depending on it.
Exactly, very depending, and not being able to consciously put a gap in between the screen and ourselves, and that sort of prevent us to be at the present. And when you're not at the present in a family life, things could go wrong, and that was a tough, time. And I kind of sort of put that experience or distill it inside, and I thought that could be a nice way of getting through that.
You have to put your code a little bit down for the mic, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I thought it would be nice to put this personal experience, which been sent to a rehab, and I kind of imagine a rehab, where the best rehabs could be. It could be on an island.
Yeah.
So in an island, a father's journey, and then it stays in a rehab, and then come back to see his son with some kind of a catharsis, like with some sort of a healing process through. And to be in the Ural in that sense was really inspiring to see what you dreamed before and what you see in reality sort of matches that and completes it together.
Yeah. So you're really also creating that show here. It's also inspiring you for material.
Because in the show, in my personal story, like I already thought about our dear director Rafael Rodan, like gives us the first kick about thinking in the COVID times, how, as I said, like how our homes become an island, and that particular island concept, like kind of taught me about thinking what could be the islands that sort of like we know, like for instance the story of Atlantis, and I sort of thought, yeah, that would be really nice. And when as soon as I come here, the thing that I always thought before and designed creatively, and I try to see that what you dream of before, and you see some relevance in the real island, and you start to get the bits and pieces and incorporate it on your real work, and it becomes more convincing, livable for yourself and for hopefully for the audience as well.
Yeah. Was this the island that you were expecting? Like, had you had another dream of an island, and
if
were you expecting palm trees or?
Yeah, that would be much. I mean, a little bit like if the weather gets a little bit hotter, that would be but it's I don't know. If this island been presented to me as the paradise, then I will become to my devoted like religious person. But but it's a really nice place to be in the sandy dunes, and you see different colors. And actually, like I look at I was traveling and I saw the flag of Terschelling, and it's different, and all these colors just representing the rooftops, the sky, the sand, and everything. So together with that is a really nice metaphor for all the things that I was thinking about an island in the flag form.
Yeah. Nice. And Naomi, you are also part of this performance.
Yes.
What is your story in this arch?
So I come from Uganda, and in my story I talk about how beautiful Uganda is with its beautiful landscapes and the rainy forests, and then later on it contradicts with how people treat you because of your identity, because of who you are or what you believe in. So there is this shadow of these nice, welcoming people, but then in the inside, if you live there and you live a different life, a different life from what they call normal, then it's not welcoming anymore. It's not the welcoming people anymore. Then they shut you down and they treat you like an outcast or something like that. And so that contradiction, for me in my story, that was my sexuality, and that pushed me to leave my country and falling out with my own mother, leaving my home that the only home that I knew, and then ending up in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the story is also a lot about your mother, the relationship towards your mother. So there's kind of a mirror here, right? So you are a father and a son, and you are a daughter and a mother.
Yeah.
Is that also how you do you play with that mirror aspect of it?
Yeah, we do. Like in the beginning, it was more of a home becoming an island. And then we came up with these stories, and then we realized that actually Vital is a mirror of me, of my mother somehow, and then I'm like a daughter, and then I see him like a mother in some way. And then with the stories connecting, Eric connects them with these songs, and they mirror each other.
Yeah, so Eric, how do you connect these stories? What is your part in it?
My part is to be the glue.
The glue.
the link to the audience.
Musician.
Yeah, I'm a singer-songwriter, and the three of us met in a storytelling course by the storytelling school in Amsterdam, the Mesrab Storytelling School, and so now stories are becoming more a bigger and bigger part in my performances as a musician. And especially the lyrical world of music is transforming a lot in my art right now. And that's what I bring to our production as well, being a glue between the stories, reflecting about
how
the
are you a
themes.
glue? Like, what do you do as a glue? do you ask questions
to the audience as well? Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and take themes that come up, give them because Betal and Naomi gives very personal perspectives, and I open up more to a more global perspective.
Yeah.
How does that look like in a bigger context? And so we kind of pass the ball in that sense, like from personal to more global.
I was interested in. I talked to you before a few days ago when we met for the first time, and you because you also have a link to the subject of identity and also to this island idea that you grew up in Finland at the shore or at the
west coast,
coast.
Yeah.
And you told me that, or I thought it was. I thought about it a lot. What you said, that you lived in Finland, but you were raised speaking Swedish.
Yeah.
Or an old version of Swedish. Can you elaborate a bit on that? How do you identify then? Are you Finn or?
For me, yeah, I've been thinking when people ask, where are you from, and I say I'm from Finland. There's a part of me that really wants to say I'm from Ostrobothnia, this region. I'm from this village, because there we have our own a bit like here, dialects everywhere and so on. But we speak 5%. Of the Finnish population speak Swedish as a mother tongue. It's an official language, Swedish, in Finland, so everybody speaks.
But
everybody
it is a minority group then, if it's only 5%.
Yeah.
And are they also, like Naomi was saying, also about as a minority group or as a person that people don't quite understand always, or they welcome, but there's a layer underneath. Is that the same way with speaking Swedish in Norway? Like, are you treated as a minority group, or
speaking Swedish in Finland? Definitely, yeah. Yeah, there is this conflict. I think this conflict exists everywhere where you have minorities and majorities. There is, from like a historical point of view as well, Finland was for 500 first. We were part of Russia. Like just a few years ago, Finland celebrated 100 years of independency. So the country by itself is quite young, but before that we were part of Russia, 200 years, and before that 500 years to Sweden. So it's like it goes back. There are energies that goes very, very far back when it comes to this language.
It's interesting how it always creates like separations, that language or borders or all these distinguishing aspects of. But on the subject of language, I wanted to ask you, Lisette, because your work, I can imagine, revolves around words. How does language influence your work?
Yeah, what I love about what you just said about language always going back and going back. For me, it also connects the stories that you're telling about mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, and really the intergenerational aspect of it, and how, like my story, or like the story of my parents, they will give it to me, and they will give it to me, etc., etc. So I really love that aspect, and also with language. Language is really important in my work because language is my work. But also there, it's a search for language, and thinking like, what is my mother tongue? What is my mother language?
Because you also work in multiple languages, don't you?
Yeah.
So do you mix them up, or do you choose very specifically what language to use when you talk about it?
I think I mix them up. And one time I was at a language conference, and someone told me, "Oh, it's so interesting that you mix it up because it's really who you are." And in that way, I also want to continue mixing languages up.
Yeah, creating a new one by mixing them. Yeah. And what are you working on Terschelling?
I'm here with my band, which I'm super excited about. And we make poetry music. So we start from my poems, and then we just create together. And we're now recording at the studio from Hessel and Tess on this island. And we're just having fun and really working hard.
And I heard that you are part of kind of a trajectory of Motel Mosaic in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
And that you also were making podcasts, like you were doing a whole research progress with different phases. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it started a long time ago, I think. I always think that everything that we do, we take it away in what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I was talking about it to the team of Motel Mosaic, and they were like, "Oh, this is interesting. Maybe we can invite you to Rotterdam, give you this time, this space and place." And then it was actually the first time that I sat down with the musicians, and instead of going into the music or going into the poetry, we talked. And we talked about the subjects that we always perform. And then while we were talking, we created new songs and new poems. Yeah. So like in the podcast, it's not online yet, but there's literally the moment of where a new song or a new poem starts.
You can see it, like the fire.
It's
fire
really
starting.
like, can you play this? And then he starts playing, and then I start singing, and there we create it.
Oh, that's so interesting that you can hear that ignite.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So now we're with these songs and poems. I never know what to call it, if it are songs or poems, but with this work, we're now recording in the studio. Yeah. Nice.
So it's also very language based, right? Or like looking for new words or coming together in this podcast that you're making, like trying to find a language together in how to vocalize these ideas. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you are all here. I'm very honored to have you at my table today. And aside from this table, I also decided that I should leave it every now and then. I should venture around the island, right? Because we're on this beautiful island. And so I thought I should go in search for rituals, because it's something that has kept me busy this last year during COVID and everything. And today I visited Diederik Krijken. And he is a theater maker, and he's working at the Oerel and Over het IJ lab, atelier. And he is making, I have to say they. They is making a new installation, and this installation is called A Queer Object. And he is working, I'm pointing, you have no idea where we are, but it's that way, on West, underneath the old nautical school. And I went to visit him, so let's have a look. We schaffen steeds meer rituelen af. Of we zijn ze gewoonweg vergeten. Toch lijkt het verlangen naar traditie groter dan ooit. Moet Zwarte Piet zwart zijn? Moet vuurwerk nog de lucht in? En wat vieren we nu eigenlijk precies met Pinksteren? Moet je terug in de tijd voor traditie, of kunnen we het oude herzien en nieuwe rituelen ontwerpen voor de toekomst? Om deze rituelen te vinden ga ik op bezoek bij verschillende theatermakers. Zij delen hun rituelen met mij ter inspiratie.
Ik ben eigenlijk een hele grote installatie aan het maken hier op locatie. En er zijn eigenlijk verschillende delen van het werk die naast elkaar kunnen bestaan. En ik ben de ruimte aan het inpakken met plastic, zoals je ziet. En die schermen, dat is eigenlijk het grootste onderdeel van het materiaal. En die schermen die zetten we in als een soort portaal naar een digitale wereld.
En wat hoop je dat het publiek denkt of meekrijgt?
Ja, het gaat voor mij heel erg over het lichaam of het lichamelijke ongemak, waar ik zelf af en toe mee zit. En ik merk dat omdat dus die digitale wereld zo naar je eigen hand is te zetten, merk ik dat ik het ook leuk vind om te zoeken wat er allemaal kan. Dus ik hoop dat ze mee willen zoeken.
En ik ben dus op zoek naar rituelen.
Ja.
Heb jij rituelen in je persoonlijke leven?
Nou, ik denk dus dat als ik een ritueel voor mezelf zou moeten bedenken, of als in wat ik doe, goed kijken. Dat doet volgens mij iedereen elke dag.
En wat maakt dat een ritueel ten opzichte van bijvoorbeeld tanden poetsen? Dat doe je ook elke dag?
Nou ja, je bent toch misschien in je hoofd of hardop een beetje met jezelf aan het praten. Of je kijkt hoe je eruit ziet. Ik merkte zelf bijvoorbeeld dat als ik het 's avonds deed, dat je dan echt zo een momentje met jezelf even van de dag afsluiten. Dus als je dan daar op een rituele manier misschien over nadenk, dan is dat toch wel groter dan even simpel checken of zo. Het gaat wel over meer. Je kijkt jezelf aan.
Nou, duidelijk, je gebruikt dit dus ook in de voorstelling, dat idee van spiegelen.
Ja.
En wat is in de voorstelling de betekenis die je daaraan wil geven?
Nou, die schermen die zijn dus een soort portalen naar een digitale wereld. En wat een beetje de crux van de voorstelling is dat die wereld naar je eigen hand is te zetten. Het is me niet per se te doen omdat we een soort meest ideale, fantastische digitale wereld hebben. Of dat we dat gaan 3D scannen en dat het zo perfect mogelijk lukt. Of dat hier een avatar zit die precies op Lodewijk lijkt. Maar in de voorstelling zijn we juist op zoek naar hoe kunnen we, als we dus dat fysieke proberen te uploaden, wat kan daar allemaal misgaan? Of wat kunnen we daar allemaal een soort van knopjes voor aandraaien, zodat dat tot je eigen verbeelding misschien wel werkt. Of juist op een fijne manier in plaats van dat er heel veel gevaar... en dat voelde voor mij best wel queer. Dus als je dan echt, zeg maar, conceptueel of is zijn nullen en enen. En ik was zo benieuwd naar, kan er ook nog iets tussen zitten, tussen die ruimte.
En ben je dan door middel van die digitale ruimte ook je eigen queerness aan het onderzoeken? Of die van je spelers? Of?
Ja, nou, het heeft wel te maken met mijn eigen identiteit. Er zijn soms mensen aan me die vragen van, ja, hoe weet je bijvoorbeeld dat je non-binair bent? En dan denk ik altijd, ja, als ik in de spiegel kijk, dan zie ik niet een man staan. Of in ieder geval het beeld wat ik heb bij mannelijkheid. Zie ik mezelf staan.
Dus dat is niet aan een gender gekoppeld?
Nee. Maar dat is wel voor mij een soort van de realisatie geweest dat ik dacht, oh ja, volgens mij kan ik me ook op een andere manier identificeren dan... Want ik worstel daar best wel mee, dat ik dacht van, ja, ben ik niet gewoon een man met vrouwelijke kanten of zo? En toen was daar opeens een soort nieuw ding. En toen dacht ik, oh ja, dat...
Weer een tussenruimte.
Precies, ja. En dat gebeurde wel echt in de spiegel.
Hey, heb jij een tip voor mij in mijn zoektocht naar rituelen?
Nou, misschien als je vanavond thuis komt, 1 minuut extra in de spiegel staan, kijken. En dan, je hoeft niet per se te praten, maar gewoon even, niet te lang, want dat kan ook verkeerd gaan. Maar gewoon een minuutje langer naar jezelf kijken en in je hoofd benoemen wat je ziet of zo. Ik denk dat
Zonder oordeel?
Ja. En dat kan dat je haar misschien een beetje gek zit of hoe je je voelt. Maar ik denk dat we wel meer naar onszelf mogen kijken af en toe. Op een positieve manier.
Diederik was talking in the... For sure. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and that's what language does in a way. Mm-hmm. And that's also kind of what I wanted to talk about with you now, is that since we're all not speaking in our native language, none of us are, which I kind of like. I always like this kind of setting where nobody speaks in their native language, because then you're all in the same, right? You're all in the same level. Mm-hmm. So, in your experience, how does language impact your identity? Like, what is the impact that it has? You already started speaking on it, like calling yourself a lesbian, but do you identify with that word, or what is it?
Yeah, language. From where I come from, we have 56 languages, so it's already something big. And when it comes to words, I just know that I love a woman, and I don't have to put a word on it.
And points us in a certain way and gives us an understanding. For me, that's been really like working now more with stories the past year. That's been really strong, a strong kind of insight to bring awareness into all the thoughts, the tiniest thought in your head, and how that really drives you and gives you a direction for your own understanding of who you are and what you're doing, what you're capable of doing, just depending on this story, this thought in your head.
And what is the difference then for you between telling a story and the language you use on a daily basis in conversation? Is there a difference?
Between a story I tell?
Yeah. Is it a different kind of language?
I think that's what we've been working a lot with, to kind of take away that, you jump up on stage and then you kind of put on a facade or something and tell a story. And we've been working a lot on that in the course, to actually we're always telling stories, just you know, just be yourself, take off the facade, and just speak from who you are.
Yeah,
And-
so the
and
storytelling
embrace
is not
whatever,
limited to a performance, but it flows through every conversation, everything you express.
Of course, yeah, definitely. And you know, and really bringing awareness into what's going on here. And yeah, so I think storytelling, or like language in that sense, really is a super strong tool of making sense of the world we live in and connecting us, but it can also, of course, disconnect us. But I mean, I think it's
So the
a
stories
powerful
you can
tool.
create yourself, right? And to which extent do you think that you can create your identity? Is it something that you create yourself, or is it something that is given to you?
Yeah, it's given to you at the beginning, but there's a vast opportunity that you can rebuild yourself. For instance, like, you know, your mother tongue, it's a sort of soil that you grow yourself in. But of course, like, there are some limitations and censoring, or all those like cultural level and thing that has been so embedded, almost like you're not fully aware. But of course, you're using a different language, it's more liberating. Then it gives you new opportunities. And for instance, like in my case, like personally, I have two names. My first name has been given to me by my grandfather, and the second name that I use. And I remember, like, you know, when I was living in my hometown, before I moved to Istanbul, I was using my first name. And my first name represents all the friendships and everything that I have, identity as that hometown, like a little boy, like just chasing and drink, I don't know, that all the things that you can imagine for a 17-year-old. But as soon as I come to a big city, I start to use my second name, which I kind of thought, okay, that gives me a new opportunity to rebuild myself. And funny enough, I moved to Amsterdam, and my name Betal, that I realized, is about payment. Like, you know, you see every
Betalen.
exactly, Betal, in every transaction, everything, and it's all as you do right now. It's always invoke some giggles and jokes, and people are kind of see some laugh, and it's definitely a positive entry into a conversation. So I thought it's nice to give me another opportunity, age of 40, as a storyteller in this name. Like, you know, a new opportunity to rebuild an identity, to, like, you know, so it's everything is transcend each other. There's no one type of boundary, like, you know.
So you're kind of like a caterpillar,
yeah,
or a
exactly.
snake shedding its skin, and
I think you should
a new name to a new face or to a new surrounding.
It could be a little scary. It's not an easy thing. Like, it's not like, you know, so positive, or everybody like loves to change in that way, but there's a cost to pay, let's say, but it's also very rewarding in my case, personal experience.
He said, do you think that identity is given to you, or do you create it yourself?
I think it also has to do a lot with the way you want to look at it, because I think there's a lot of stories that people or structures or whatever give to you, like, hey, there's this story, there's this story, there's this story, and then I think you can choose from those stories or just choose to make your own. But it depends. I think for one person, they live the life, like they live the story that someone else gave them, and for the other, they try to ignore
maneuver around it,
Yeah.
or create new. And what do, you personally?
I think for me it's more like a journey or something, and it's I look at all the stories that I have, and then I follow one or I don't, or something like that. Yeah.
So it can be a combination.
Yeah, and also, for example, the stories that I had to choose from are, am I from the Netherlands or am I from Rwanda? And it was always a struggle of like, oh, I'm partly this, I'm partly this. But then at some point I started realizing, but what if I'm both, and what if being both makes it a plus? And then it's like, oh, I look at it different now, and then it becomes my own story.
Yeah. So is it, you were saying also about all these like switching in different languages and stuff, I had to think then, oh, it's identity is like, it's fragmented. There are many shades in it. But as you're talking now, I'm also thinking it's also kind of fluid. So maybe you don't know where one ends and the other begins. That it kind of... Do you feel like it's...
Intertwined or...
Yeah.
And it's something people call like intersectionality or something, where everything just comes together, and where people ask, "Who are you?" and you have multiple answers. Yeah.
Yeah. I also have to think of, Eric, what you were saying in the, as we were talking about the storytelling aspect of it, that maybe it gives another layer to language in that you place it in a specific context, or that with the context of stories or of songs, you can create another layer to how they're organized or to how they're shaped. Do you think that can be part of what you were talking about in storytelling? That it communicates something else on top of the words?
In combination to where the performance takes place.
That too. Yeah, the context, of course. No, but also because you shape it. Because there can be an allegory in it, for example. Or do you understand what I mean?
More like the craft of it, crafting something specific or song form, or in that sense. No, definitely, that brings out, Muse putting a melody to it brings something, a deeper layer. It's always interesting to perform something, a song or a text or a story, and in your head it's clear what it's about. You always go with a certainty. You put your hours and your blood, sweat and tears on it, and you're like, this is about this and this and this, and then you go and perform it, and people get, you hear so many versions like what people got from it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is about this, and this is about this, and this. And we're like, wow, the same song, and I play it in all these different places, and it's so many stories, one single thing. So it's really,
and
it's challenging also.
Do you all perform or write? Well, for you, you kind of already said it. But is there a difference in speaking your native tongue to speaking another? Like now we're speaking English. Do you do storytelling in English, or do you do it in multiple languages?
So, for example, our show Syllaba, the title is in my language.
What does it mean?
It means I can't see.
I can't see.
Yeah. Or invisibility. Yeah, it can mean different things. It depends on how you put it in a sentence. So, and in the song also, there are words that are from my language. So we kind of used English and Luganda. That's my mother tongue. But in most cases, the stories like we did in Mesrab were in English, I think. Yeah. But also, I think it depends on the audience that you have. Like if I'm somewhere else with Luganda-speaking people, of course, I will tell stories in Luganda or in English. Or if I'm with Dutch people, then I will tell a story in Dutch. Yeah.
For me,
So, Lisette, you were gonna perform for us, and you were gonna decide based on the conversation what you were gonna perform. So I'm very curious.
I decided.
You did?
Yeah. Can I say the title?
Yes, please.
I don't know if you speak a little bit Dutch, but to translate the title, it's Zwarte meisjes die wenen in witte talen, black girls that weep in white languages. So it's really about what we've been talking about.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you go to the stage. So we're gonna listen and watch Lisette Maneza perform. I have to repeat the title now. Black Girls Weeping in White Languages with her bandmates, Peter and Michelle. Take it away.
So with this story, we're going back into not only my story, but the story of my mother and her mother and her mother. And we're going to Rwanda, I'm just explaining so that you know you're gonna feel it. You're not gonna hear it, but you're gonna feel it. But we're going to Rwanda and what happened there in 1994 and how we got here, etc. Voici l'histoire. Voici l'histoire de la petite sœur. Qui avait de la douleur dans son cœur, het kleine zusje. Dat haar mama troosten wou. Maar niet wist dat ze Rwandese moeders niet troosten kon. Het begon tussen Congo, Burundi, Tanzania en Oeganda in. Mamma mia. We gaan Rwanda in. Het troosteloze, dakloze, 1000 doden weer, 1000 doden meer dan 1000 doden Duits-Afrikaans Oosten en ik ben de dochter van de vluchteling. Ik ben in Nederland geboren. Toch in Afrika gemaakt, net te laat, ik ben een Afro-Europeaan. In België ben ik de Hollander. In Holland ben ik de Brabander. In Brabant ben ik de Afrikaan. In Afrika de Europeaan. In Brussel ben ik Lisette. In Brussel voel ik me thuis. Kolonisatiewijs is dat juist. Mensen van mijn kleur, wij zijn gekooide vogels. Waarom maken wij geluid? Ik kruip in mama. Haar mama. Haar mama's uit. Haar mama's uit. En ze fluit zo luid. 1994. I want you to play being the grandmother who's still in the country when everyone has left. And she's crying to her children, come back, come back. Hier is het. Wie de genocide niet kent, leest erover. Die luistert naar de verhalen van wie grootouders Joden. Hier tellen we de doden van 1000 jaar geleden. Thuis is het. Thuis is het. Wie de genocide kent, die spreekt er niet over. Wie deze niet kent, die weet er niets over. Wie de Hitler is van mijn land, ik spreek er niet over, breek er niet over. Ik ben een leek, ik weet er niets over, ween er niet over. En Michel, I want you to play the counting. We're counting numbers, we're counting people, we're counting losses. Wie de Hitler is van mijn land. Ik spreek er niet over, breek er niet over. Ik ben een leek, ik weet er niets over, ween er niet over. Mijn Tweede Wereldoorlog is nog jonger dan mijn zus en ze roept Oete, papa, Oete. Maar in dit liedje vinden ze... In dit liedje vinden ze hem wel terug. Nee, kijk. Een oorlog die je zelf niet hebt meegemaakt is in het huis een kamer waarin je niet binnen geraakt. En we zitten in de woonkamer. En mama haalt in het Afrikaans en tussen haar tranen door laat ze getallen vallen. Ringe, Kawiri, Gatatu, Kane, gatana tu karingu munani. Ichenda ichumi makumari. Makumjaviri mama. Mama, waar voel je me aan? Mama, je bent de oorlog uitgekomen. Arikose. Maar komt de oorlog ooit uit jou? En dan stopt ze met tellen. Ze heeft zoveel mensen verloren dat ze het niet wilt weten. Mais c'est l'histoire de la petite sœur qui avait de la douleur dans son cœur. Het is het verhaal van de Rwandese moeder die haar dochter troosten wou. Maar niet wist dat zwarte meisjes die wenen in witte talen niet te troosten zijn. Mijn oma was 15. En werd uitgehuwelijkt. Ik was 15 en ik werd depressief. Om niets. Ik had het leven. Waar zij voor hadden gestreden. Het leven waar zij voor hadden gebeden. Het leven waar zij aan waren overleden. Niet lief. Ik was de reden. Ik was de reden waarom zij waren gevlucht. En ik wilde terug. Ik wilde terug. Ik wilde terug. Dankjewel.
Wow. Thank you, Lisette. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
While you're walking back, it was multiple languages, but what was your feeling, Naomi?
I know about the war in
Rwanda? Yeah, it's emotional.
And of course I could hear it. All these innocent children dying for a cause they don't know about. And it's not so long ago. I mean 1994. And then in 1995 I was born. But it seems like yesterday, even though I didn't experience it. But some of my grandparents did. And my grandmother told me about her story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. You said it in Dutch, I think, but she described it as it's a room in a house where you don't go.
Yeah.
Like it's.
Yeah, it's so weird. I've been thinking about it, like writing the songs and the poems. It's like, it's not my story. I didn't go through it. I know nothing about it, but still, it's my story because I've seen that room, and I've tried to open it, but I couldn't. So somehow it becomes your story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes up space in the house. Like it's
there even when it's not there. Yeah.
And how do you deal with? Because that also stood out to me in what you sang or what you told is the responsibility that befalls on you as a generation born here. Yeah. And how do you? Well, you already said about it, but maybe in English as well. Like, how do you deal with that responsibility? You personally, like,
but
not.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, you said the responsibility of like what your grandmother fought for, what the generations before you fought for, and now you are here, and you said I want to go back, like this, again a kind of mirror, in generations. How do you yourself deal with that responsibility that you feel?
I don't know if it's responsibility. I don't know. It's more a realizing that what came before me and that I carry that with me, and that for me it's more like something that I'm super grateful for. Like when I think of my life, I'm like shit. Like yeah, sometimes there's something that me and my friends talk about. It's like immigrant guilt, and that we feel like we're guilty if we don't make the best out of our lives after everything that came before us.
Yeah.
But beside feeling that, it's not something that that keeps me awake all the time, because it's the way it is or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot change it by
Yeah.
doing anything.
Yeah.
So that's part of that identity map that is in place,
Yeah.
that is given to you.
Yeah, but it's nice to realize it and to look back at it and to even give it to the others and to talk about it.
Yeah, and create beautiful things with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to share that connection in a way also. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, what it made me realize was we talked about like the use of language and stories, like what's the difference in like daily talk and when you step on a stage, how does that differ? When we have all these social norms, and even around this table, where a bit like, what can I say, what can I not say? Ooh, I don't know enough about this. I should,
Yeah.
So we are constantly checking here. But the stage is a place where you can really drop everything. For me, at least, it's a space where you can be completely express, whatever you want to say. Like, it's a safe space.
Do you feel completely free to be whoever you want to be on stage?
No, I wouldn't say it, definitely not. But that's where I'm walking towards, and that's what I feel the stage is there for, to elaborate topics that we find that are taboo, that are not talked about. In art, through art, it's a contained space where we can bring explosives, very tough topics and very painful topics, and we can elaborate that pain through this to be contained by this art performance or whatever art form it is, but it's contained by this. It's like within the frame of this artwork, and through that frame we can elaborate and
It makes
and
me
deal with it better. Yeah.
It makes me think of a poet. Her name is Emmy Mahmoud, and she has a poem where she's describing a situation. She's from Sudan. She's talking about Darfur and her mother, and then she's also talking about what she does and poetry and slam poetry. But then she also says something like, I don't know how to quote her exactly, but she says something like that she's always doubting about what she can or what she cannot say in front of a microphone. So, do you have that, or?
Yeah, definitely. But I see that as a handicap from all these patterns we navigate through in just our daily lives. But then the stage, I consider that really a free, a place where you can say anything, as long as you have the frame for it and create the frame for it, then it's really a free place.
Do you feel the same, Lisetta? Because I think your question, because you said in front of a microphone, was also about the stage. Do you feel like you can say anything on a stage? That it's a free,
I don't know.
Free space?
I don't know. I think I say everything I want up till now, but I'm not sure if everything is possible in front of a microphone. I don't know. Like,
No.
I do the code switching when I go in front of a microphone.
You do that?
Code switching, as
The code
in,
switching, yeah. Yeah, and I also like how transparent you are on stage, in that it's of course part of your story, but that you tell the drummer, you tell Michelle, like, please make this sound. And it feels like, I don't know if she's really experimenting with that, or the trumpet going like...
They are
going off key in kind of trying to feel this cry. That's really also a freedom that you take, that I find really interesting to experiment with that. And is it... in what way does cultural identity, or the way that you look, influence who you can be in a performance in this day and age? Like, how does that... Do you feel like that influences things, Betal?
cultural identity.
Yeah, or your appearance.
Yeah, it definitely, like, you know, in terms of storytelling, if you want to be true to yourself, which is a very important part, like you need to be really transparent. I guess it comes from, like, you know, you need to be fully exploratory about your own cultural identity, and it's a good starting point in that way. But if we talk about identities, can I just like go into the freeway? In a way?
Yes,
yeah, sure.
please.
Just
Feel the fire.
Yeah,
Feel the tongue of the fire.
I have. Now I'm gonna talk. Exactly. Now he opened the door. I mean, it's not my fault.
He's the glue.
Yeah, I'm just a little troubled about that, in a way, since maybe it's also my story is about how we become like very obsessed about the screens, technology, and everything. I mean, we are going through a very challenging process, and I try to understand how this fragmented identities, like very micro identities that we form ourselves as a collage, at the end will help us to deal with these big problems. Like, you know, that's sort of a troubling thing in that sense. So my approach is always like quite questioning that. Like, okay, fine. I mean, there's a climate change, there's the Extinction Rebellion, like all those big problems. And then we are also need to like encounter these problems by need to dealing with all identities. That's a I don't know the answer, of course, but it's just a question that sort of when identity or cultural identity comes to mind, is always I'm kind of thinking as somebody who grew up in the 80s, like, you know, it was good old class struggle, and then everything just added up on top, and now it's going to a kind of a new phase. I don't know if will help us in that way, and we need to sort of find some umbrellas and some.
What do you think the new phase is? Just to clarify. The
new phase is about, like, you know, in the new terms, like when we need to deal with some big problems in that way, like a climate change, as I said, or like, it's like exactly but how we need to put all those different identities in a single umbrella, under the single umbrella, which will help us together as a humanity to challenge and deal with these problems.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing when you want to question me about the identities, it immediately just comes to my mind in a critical sense.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting put. Yeah, that's good.
So, like, you know.
So I'm thinking then, how does that influence you as a storyteller? Like, what is it? Does it give you? Is that material for you to tell stories about, or is it something that you have in the back of your head? And because you say we're going into a new phase, so it's in progress.
Yeah, like, because I guess the main point is, like, you know, how with those different identities, how we need to connect each other. And storytelling and stories like really help that in different languages, different backgrounds, but it really melts everybody in the same pot. And that's kind of really serves the purpose of connecting. And after that, like, of course, that's a new agenda, which you need to do with this connectedness and this togetherness. How are we going to move forward? That's also like a kind of a conversating issue. But stories, like, in that sense, like, help us to talk about that and finding a way. And it could be very useful and a pragmatic tool as well.
Yeah.
But I wonder, when you ask us about identity, how would you define that word?
How would I define identity? Well, I've been researching it for a few years now. I've asked a lot of people this question. I think I was brought up. I was talking about this today, actually. I think I was brought up in a capitalist Western society where everything has to be in a certain box or be labeled, and that I also projected that onto myself for a long time. And I think I'm now in the progress, by talking about it with a lot of people, in discovering that it has limited me in a way to think like that. So that's why I find the concept of queerness also interesting, in not having to choose one or the other, and not having to say black or white or thick or thin or whatever. And also letting go of that, of capitalism in a way, letting go of being able to be a target group for a marketing campaign, because that's how it feels sometimes, you know? So I think that's where I am at with identity. But I see a lot happening. That's also why I asked this question. In the cultural field, I see that we're now in this. We've had Black Lives Matter a year ago. Things are things are going beyond where they have been before. And at the same time, I also see that there is now something put on, for example, makers of colors, to have to talk about that all the time, or have to talk, or have to tell their story. And I don't think they shouldn't, or we shouldn't. But I think it should be all. Like, it can be that. It can be the intersections where you were talking about are everywhere. And I think that's where it becomes kind of what you're doing already, I think. Where you're letting it flow in, that there are connections everywhere in it. And it's not just about defining you as a certain stereotype. Yeah. So one last question I want to ask you before we extinguish the fire. A very important question is when can we see you? Like, we're now in this, we're online, we're on an island, but where can we come and see what you're up to?
Well, Silaba, we are playing on Tuesday next week, on the 15th.
But that's not online, right? That's like an intern.
Right.
So when is are you gonna?
It's a work in progress. We still don't have the exact dates yet, but we will keep you posted.
And where can we follow you?
Oh yeah, on my Instagram.
Plugging Instagram.
My Facebook and Instagram, it's Naomi24 Houston. But also on the website of the Uru Festival.
Of Uru and of the Mesrab,
yeah,
I think also.
For sure, yeah.
I think the syllaba will be on the 15th. We will have one in 11 and one at 5 p.m.
Yeah, but I mean for the audience at home, they cannot see that yet. So I will come to that. That's an intern.
Yeah, our
okay,
our
so we keep the website.
Yeah, exactly.
And die zetten, when is you're also in process? You have podcast coming, you said?
Yeah, but I'm still working on that. But I do performances with the band. I live in Brussels. So in Brussels we're doing something in the KVS, 30 juni. And then in Oostende, Theater aan Zee, we're performing there. And Theater Boulevard in Den Bosch. So, yeah.
Great, there are opportunities.
Yeah, finally.
The theaters are open again. And Eric, where can we, because you're also a musician, where can we listen to your music?
Well, I'm all the like Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, all these places. Erik Sjöholm, my name. And also during July, I'll be touring in Central Europe, doing living room concerts and very small shows. Following the restrictions of the different countries. We'll go through Belgium, France, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, this area. If you want to follow that journey, I'll post things on Instagram and on social media as well.
And that's just your name on Instagram?
Yes, Erik Sjöholm.
Sjöholm with an O with a stripe through it.
Yeah, it's not. Actually, like.
Oh, people should look on the Uru website, and they can find your name and follow you for your tour.
Yes.
All right. So I would like to end the conversation with one last thought, because I inspired these Vurige Gesprekken on a book that I'm reading, and I recommend it. I really recommend it to you, and it's called The Good Ancestor, and it's written by Roman Krasnaric, and he is talking about being a time rebel, and he's saying that actually we have two kinds of brains. This is not something he invented. I think it comes from sociology, but he uses it in the book to explain that you have a marshmallow brain, which we've been enjoying, our marshmallow brain, which is like the short-term feeling of joy, kind of like going online and clicking the buy now button on Amazon, that rush that you feel. And then there's another part of the brain that we don't train so often, and he says it's called the acorn brain. In Dutch you would say the eikelbrein. And this acorn brain is the long-term brain, and it's about planting a seed or an acorn and it taking many years for it to grow a tree. And And so I thought, we've had our marshmallows. And now, when you're leaving, I will give you a cadeautje. I told you I was going to give you a cadeautje. I'll give you a present from the zelfpluktuin. And it's seeds that you can sow. And also, the seeds that you planted in this conversation will stay with me, and I think with all of us for a longer time to come. And so we have something for the future. And I want to thank you very much for being here. And now we're going to listen to Lisette one more time. Do you know what you're going to perform now?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting us. I'm going to perform a poem about the Dutch language.
Dutch language.
Koetjes en kalfjes.
Koetjes en kalfjes.
Yeah.
Do you know what that means?
Dutch language.
How do we translate that? Cows and baby cows.
And the thing is, in Rwanda, where I'm originally from, cows are like the holy animal, the most important thing. When you get married, you give a cow. A woman is as beautiful as a cow. And in Dutch, cows, koetjes en kalfjes means like talking nonsense.
Talking about like the little things, like blah 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 blah.
Talking nonsense.
Cow talk.
So yeah, I'm gonna talk nonsense.
Okay, so we're gonna listen again to Lisette Maneza and her band members, Peter and Michelle. And she's gonna perform a poem for us called Koetjes en Kalfjes.
Okay. Peter en Michelle. Speel de Nederlandse taal. Met de harde G en de zachte G en de CHT. En de otjes au en de atjes au. En zo al die moeilijke kleine dingetjes, maar ook weer het gemak van de Nederlandse taal. En we spreken het aan tafeltaal. Koetjes en kalfjes. Een ode aan de taal. De harde G en de zachte G. De CHT van 88 en half 11 taal. Koetjes en kalfjes. Korte ei, eieren. Lange ei, ijsjes. Korte ei, meisjes. Puntjes op de derde E bij zeeën. Puntjes op de eerste E bij poëet. Puntjes op de I zetten, zoals kerstjes op de taart decoreren. De C als een S en dezelfde C als een K. Dit is een ode. Dit is een ode aan alle overbodige woorden, die telkens broodnodige worden. Queer, het Tinderella-syndroom, klimaatdonderdag, decolonisatiedebat. Een ode aan de regenboogtaal, MeToo-verhaal, Instagram voor your DM me maar. In gebiedende wijs, onvoltooide tegenwoordige tijd, onomatopees woorden die klinken als klanken. Sissen, pissen, eeuw, zo van nieuw en alles wat niet lekker is. De otjesau en de atjesau. De otjesau en de atjesau. De otjesau en de... Dit is een ode. Een ode aan onze eigen taal. Eigenwijze taal, af en toe ook best wel wijze taal. Wegwijzende taal, verdwaald, gedesoriënteerd, geraffineerde taal. Dit is een ode, dit is een ode, dit is een ode aan onze eigen taal. Eigenwijze taal, eigenwijze taal, af en toe ook best wel wijze taal. Wegwijzende taal, verdwaald, gedesoriënteerd, geraffineerde taal. Aan de otjesau en de atjesau. Koetjes en kalfjes. Koetjes en kalfjes. Dit is een ode aan de alledaagse taal. De DT-foutentaal, de hoi en dan doei. We spreken het aan tafeltaal. De Nederlandse. De Nederlandse. De Nederlandse taal. Dankjewel.
So To our audience watching online, I can go back to Dutch now actually. You don't have to hear this. Dank jullie wel voor het kijken. En morgen zijn Jennifer en Dean weer ergens op het eiland jullie host. En de dag daarna ben ik er weer met een andere Vurige Gesprekken. En dan voor nu fijne avond en dankjewel dat je er was.
Ik zag jou wel.